I will never forget the sound that shattered me. It wasn't thunder or an explosion or even a scream. It was the sound of my daughter's voice, my Caitlin, floating through a phone line she'd forgotten to hang up. The rustle of her purse muffled the background, but her words rang out with cruel clarity. "It's time for him to go to a nursing home. He's a burden." I froze in my recliner, Ellen's picture smiling back at me from the mantel, my fork halfway to my mouth. For a moment, I thought I must have misheard. Caitlin had always been my pride, my little girl, the reason I'd worked double shifts and poured sweat into every beam and nail of the house I built with my late wife. Surely, she couldn't mean me. Not her father, not the man who had given her everything. But then came the voice of her husband, Jeremy, smooth, cold, like a knife sliding against glass. "Exactly, he's slipping, he's forgetful. If we wait too long, the house won't be worth as much. Right now, Denver's market could fetch 900,000, maybe more." A laugh that belonged to my daughter. The phone slid from my numb fingers and clattered onto the hardwood floor I had laid with Ellen 23 years ago. Every board had been measured, cut, and nailed by my own hands. Every corner carried memories of Caitlin chasing her toys, of Ellen humming while she painted the walls. And now, those same walls had heard my daughter's betrayal. My chest tightened, as though the house itself was holding its breath with me. I leaned forward, gripping the arms of my recliner, trying to steady the world that was suddenly spinning out of control. Did she just call me a burden? Did she just laugh about putting me away? Like I was a piece of broken furniture they couldn't wait to throw to the curb. For years I had bent over backwards for Caitlin, paid her college tuition in full, walked her down the aisle, covering a wedding she could never have afforded. Even gave her and Jeremy money for their down payment when they claimed they wanted to build a future. Every sacrifice felt worth it because I believed she loved me as deeply as I loved her. But in that moment, I realized love was not what she felt. It was calculation. Jeremy's voice continued, muffled but unmistakable. "We should strike while he still trusts us completely. He has no idea we're planning this. The longer we wait, the harder it gets." A cold shiver ran down my spine. I felt Ellen's absence more than ever. She would have known what to say, how to handle this. She had always been the wise one, the peacemaker. Now, all I had was her photograph, those kind brown eyes looking at me from the silver frame, as if asking, "What will you do now?" I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the clock Ellen had given me on our 15th anniversary. Its pendulum ticked, steady and merciless, as though counting down the seconds to the death of the man I thought I was. The trusting father, the proud builder, the safe place. And in the silence after Caitlin's laughter, something inside me cracked. I wasn't just hurt. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was awake. For the first time, I saw my daughter not as the girl I had carried on my shoulders, but as a woman standing beside a man who wanted me erased. And worse, she was laughing with him about it. I whispered to the empty room, to Ellen's memory, to myself, "They think I'm finished, but I'm not." My hands trembled as I reached down for the phone on the floor. My thumb hovered over the screen, ready to hang up the call and end the nightmare. But then I hesitated. There was something in Caitlin's tone I couldn't ignore. Not just the cruelty, not just the greed, something else. Something in her voice made my stomach turn. Like this wasn't the first time they'd said these words. She sounded rehearsed, almost practiced, as if my daughter and her husband had done this before. When people see me now, an aging man with weathered hands and a stiff back, they don't see the decades that carved me into who I am. They don't see the nights spent pouring cement under floodlights, or the mornings when my alarm went off at 4:30 a.m., and I was already lacing up my boots. But Ellen did. My late wife saw every ounce of sweat I left on this earth. She was there when we signed the deed to this house, the one we thought would carry our family through generations. I still remember the day we broke ground. Caitlin was only 5 years old, her pigtails bouncing as she toddled across the dirt lot. She asked me, "Daddy, is this where my room will be?" Her little finger pointed at nothing but air, and I laughed through the exhaustion of a 12-hour shift. "Yes, sweetheart, right there. Big windows so you can see the stars." And that's what kept me going, the thought that everything I built was for her. We saved every dime. Ellen worked part-time at the library. I picked up side jobs after construction shifts, roof repairs, driveways, you name it. We We pinch pennies on ourselves so Caitlin never had to feel like she went without. When she wanted ballet lessons, I worked Saturday overtime. When she needed braces, I skipped buying the new truck I'd been saving for. I told myself it was worth it, because this was what fathers do. Fathers sacrifice, fathers protect. And when college came, I signed checks with a pride that made my chest swell. Tuition, books, even her off-campus apartment, covered. I still remember helping her move in. Ellen and I carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs while Caitlin twirled around her new place, already dreaming of her future. I told Ellen later that night, "It's fine, my back can take it. She deserves this start." Ellen squeezed my hand and whispered, "She'll remember what you gave up for her." But here's the truth I didn't know then. Children don't always remember sacrifices. Sometimes they see them as debts owed. When Caitlin married Jeremy, I wanted to believe he was a good man. He had the charm, the polished words, the firm handshake. Ellen used to warn me, sometimes the shiniest apple hides the deepest rot. I brushed it off, convincing myself Caitlin was happy. That was all that mattered. I even paid for the wedding. Every flower, every plate, the dress she said she couldn't live without. Watching her walk down the aisle, radiant and smiling, I thought, this is it. My life's work has been worth it. But now, sitting in this house that still carries Ellen's scent in the wood and fabric, I realize every sacrifice was a brick I handed them. A house they didn't have to build, a future they didn't have to earn, and worse, I realize I gave them the weapon they now plan to use against me. I look around the living room, tracing the memories in every corner. The burgundy sofa where Caitlin once curled up with homework. The coffee table I built in the garage, sanding it smooth while she colored beside me. The walls Ellen painted in soft earth tones, telling me, this house should feel like it's hugging you when you walk in. It did once, but now these walls feel like they're watching. The tick of the grandfather clock echoes louder than it should, filling the silence. I can't stop replaying Caitlin's voice in my head. The same girl who once called me hero at her kindergarten play now calls me a burden. I whisper into the empty room, my voice shaking. When did love turn into calculation? My hands rest on the arms of my recliner, but they won't stop trembling. The betrayal cuts deeper because it came from the very person I believed would carry Ellen's values forward. And yet, something about the way Caitlin said it gnaws at me. It wasn't hesitation. It wasn't guilt. It was confidence. Like she knew exactly what she was doing. My heart started racing as I realized. This wasn't a careless comment. It was a plan already in motion. If you had asked me 5 years ago what my proudest achievement was, I would have answered without hesitation. My daughter. For most of my life, Caitlin was my reason to keep going. After Ellen passed, she became the only tether between me and a world that suddenly felt too empty. I used to joke that she was my compass. Wherever she went, that's where home was. And there were years, so many years, when she proved me right. I remember the trips we took together. Summers by the lake, Caitlin's laughter echoing across the water as she begged me to push her kayak faster. Winters spent huddled around the fireplace, her head resting on Ellen's lap, while I read aloud from the old storybooks. Even when she was a teenager and the world seemed to pull her in every direction, she still came back to me for advice. Dad, what do you think about this college? Dad, should I take this job? Dad, what would Mom say? Those questions made me feel needed, anchored. Every answer I gave carried the weight of Ellen's memory, and I did my best to honor her wisdom. When Caitlin graduated, I was the loudest one clapping in the auditorium. I can still feel the sting of tears on my cheeks as I thought, we did it, Ellen. She made it. Her wedding day? That was another milestone I thought would be etched in gold forever. I stood at the back of the church, Caitlin's arm wrapped through mine, and whispered, "You look just like your mother." She squeezed my hand and said, "Don't make me cry before the ceremony, Dad." Walking her down that aisle was one of the proudest and most painful moments of my life. Proud because I had raised her into a woman who deserved happiness, and painful because I knew Ellen should have been there too. Even after marriage, Caitlin kept me close, at least at first. She'd call me on Sunday mornings to chat about little things, a new recipe she was trying, a movie she'd seen, a book she thought I'd enjoy. She'd ask me to stop by, and I always came running. If a faucet leaked, I fixed it. If the car made a strange sound, I checked it. I didn't mind. That's what fathers do. Looking back, I realize I mistook convenience for closeness. At the time, though, I was just grateful. Grateful that my daughter wanted me in her life. Grateful that she'd grown into someone strong, ambitious, and, at least in my eyes, good-hearted. There's a memory that haunts me now. A summer barbecue at her house, maybe 2 years ago. She pulled me aside as the kids ran around the yard and Jeremy flipped burgers on the grill. She hugged me and whispered, "Dad, I don't know what I'd do without you." Those words used to fill me with pride. Now they replay like a cruel joke. Because what do you do when the same lips that once kissed your cheek and said, "I need you," are the ones calling you a burden? I sit in this house and let those memories play like a film reel in my mind. And for a while, they soothe me. They remind me that love once lived here, that I wasn't always seen as disposable. But then the reel skips. The warmth of memory collides with the ice of reality. I hear her voice on that phone call again. Cold, calculating, nothing like the girl I raised. My heart pounds as I wonder, which version is real? Was she always capable of cruelty and I just didn't see it? Did Jeremy twist her, poison her, turn her into someone I can't recognize? Or worse, was this always inside her, waiting for the right moment to surface? I rub my temples, trying to chase the questions away. But the doubt won't leave, because somewhere deep down, I realize this betrayal didn't come out of nowhere. There must have been signs, small cracks in the golden years that I refused to see. And as I forced myself to replay those memories, my pulse quickened, because I began to notice details I had ignored, little warning signs hiding in plain sight. They say hindsight is 20/20. Looking back now, I see the cracks were there all along, tiny fissures in the foundation of my relationship with Caitlin, warning signs I dismissed because I didn't want to believe my little girl was slipping away from me. It started small, missed calls, unanswered texts. She used to call me every Sunday morning without fail, her cheerful, "Hi, Dad," brightening my day. Then those calls grew irregular. I told myself she was busy, that life had gotten hectic. After all, she had a husband, a job, ambitions of her own. Who was I to cling too tightly? But I remember one Thanksgiving that stung more than it should have. I had spent the whole day preparing Ellen's old recipes, her stuffing, her famous pumpkin pie, thinking it would make Caitlin feel close to her mom again. I called her that morning, excitement bubbling in my chest. She answered, distracted. "Dad, Jeremy and I already made plans with his family. You understand, right?" I said I did. Of course I did. But after hanging up, I sat at the kitchen table staring at 2 empty place settings, the smell of pie filling the air like a cruel joke. Another time, she came by the house with Jeremy. He walked through the rooms as if appraising them, tapping the walls, commenting on the good bones of the place. At first, I thought he was just making conversation, but there was something in the way he looked at me when he said, "A house like this could fetch close to $1 million on the market these days." Caitlin laughed and nudged him, but her eyes flicked to mine in a way I couldn't quite read. I ignored the unease settling in my stomach. Why would I suspect anything? He was her husband. She was my daughter. They were family. And yet, the signs kept coming. Jeremy started offering to help with my finances. He'd bring up things like power of attorney and estate planning over dinner, his tone smooth and persuasive. "You should let us manage some of these things for you, Dad," he'd say, leaning forward with that salesman's smile. "It's a lot for one person. Caitlin and I could take the stress off your shoulders." I brushed it off with a chuckle, telling him I wasn't ready to hand over the reins just yet. But later that night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering why he was so eager. Caitlin, too, began to change. Her visits grew shorter, her voice more clipped. She'd stop by, but half the time she was glued to her phone, scrolling through messages. When I tried to reminisce about Ellen or share an old story from Caitlin's childhood, she'd smile politely, then change the subject to Jeremy's new business venture or the hot real estate market in Boulder. At first I thought it was me. Maybe I was boring her. Maybe I was too stuck in the past, clinging to memories she had outgrown. But then came the moments that cut deeper. The time she scolded me for forgetting to turn off the coffee pot, her voice sharp instead of concerned. The way she sighed when I asked her to help move a heavy box, muttering under her breath that I wasn't as strong as I used to be. They were little things, easy to dismiss, but when strung together, they painted a picture I refused to see. The girl who once curled up on my lap during thunderstorms now looked at me with impatience, as if I were an obstacle in her way. The man she chose as her partner studied me with calculating eyes, as if he were waiting for me to slip. I told myself it was nothing, that I was imagining things, that grief made me sensitive, Ellen's absence magnifying every offhand remark. But deep down, in the quiet moments when the house creaked and the clock ticked too loudly, I knew better. Something was shifting, something dangerous. And though I didn't yet know the extent of it, my pulse quickened each time I replayed their words in my head. Because the more I thought about those subtle cracks, the more I realized they weren't cracks at all. They were fractures, spreading fast, and one day soon, everything I had built was going to collapse. It happened on an ordinary evening, the kind you never expect to split your life into before and after. Dinner was nothing special, just leftover meatloaf from the night before, the kind of meal Ellen used to transform into something cozy with a candle on the table. Without her, it was just food filling space in my stomach. I settled into her old recliner with my plate, the television murmuring in the background when the phone rang. Caitlin's name flashed across the screen. My heart warmed instantly, the way it always did when I saw her name. I pressed answer. "Dad, how are you holding up?" Her voice carried that familiar warmth, and for a moment, it was like I had my little girl back. We chatted about small things, her business trip in Phoenix, the conference Jeremy was attending, how exhausting the schedule was. She teased me about eating enough, and I joked about nearly forgetting to turn off the stove yesterday. She laughed softly, though it sounded a little forced. Then, just as she said goodnight, there was a click. Silence. I thought she had hung up. I almost pressed the red button myself, until I heard her voice again. Faint, muffled, like the phone had slipped into her purse. And what I heard next hollowed me out. "Jeremy, you see how he's deteriorating? He forgot to turn off the stove again. What if he burns the whole house down?" My breath caught. My hand froze on the armrest. Jeremy's voice, smooth and practical, followed. "It's time, Caitlin. He's becoming a burden. Your dad's a good man, but he can't live alone anymore. The house is worth almost $1 million now. If we sell it, we can finally buy that place in Boulder with the mountain view." A silence stretched, then Caitlin's voice, colder than I'd ever heard. "You're right. We shouldn't wait. The longer we delay, the harder it will be to convince him. He trusts me completely. He won't see it coming." And then she laughed. My daughter laughed. The sound sliced through me like glass. This was the same laugh that once bubbled up when I pushed her on the swings, the laugh that echoed through our family trips. Now it was twisted, sharp, poisoned with calculation. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering to the hardwood floor. The noise didn't even interrupt them. They kept talking, their words spilling into my living room like venom. "Jeremy, we'll frame it as concern for his safety. He's forgetful, vulnerable. No one will question it. Caitlin, and once he's in a home, we can renovate, flip it fast. With the market this hot, we'll walk away with 900, maybe more." The recliner seemed to swallow me whole. My chest tightened, and I struggled to breathe. I looked across the room at Ellen's photograph. Her eyes, forever kind, seemed to pierce through me, asking silently, "How could this be our daughter?" My hands shook as I bent to pick up the phone. My thumb hovered over the screen, ready to end the nightmare, but I couldn't move. Their voices held me captive. "Jeremy, think about it, Caitlin. No more worrying about bills, no more scraping by. Your dad's house is our future. Caitlin, our future." Those two words broke me. Everything I had sacrificed, every sleepless night, every dollar poured into her education, her wedding, her comfort, was nothing more than kindling for their greed. I sat there, stunned, my heart pounding against my ribs. And then, slowly, something inside me hardened. They thought I was weak. They thought I was slipping, blind, ready to be discarded. But I wasn't gone yet. And God help them. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. My hands trembled, not from age, but from rage, because in that moment I swore, if they wanted me gone, I would show them just how dangerous it is to underestimate a man with nothing left to lose. That night, sleep never came. I sat in Ellen's old recliner, staring at the grandfather clock as its pendulum swung back and forth. marking the slow death of everything I once believed in. Each tick was a hammer, driving the betrayal deeper into my chest. My daughter, my only child. The girl I had carried on my shoulders, sung to sleep, protected from thunderstorms. She wanted me erased. I kept replaying her words like shards of glass in my ears. He's a burden. He trusts me completely. Our future. The house felt different, heavier somehow. The walls that had once been filled with warmth now seemed to lean in on me, listening, judging. The burgundy sofa, the coffee table I built with my hands, Ellen's photo on the mantel, all of it blurred under the weight of betrayal. I spoke aloud to the silence. Ellen, I don't understand. How did we raise her into this? How did love turn into calculation? But the silence offered no answers. The next day, I moved through life like a ghost. I burned the toast, forgot where I left my glasses, stood in the kitchen for 10 minutes without knowing why. My body was present, but my mind was stuck on that phone call, hearing Jeremy's smug voice and Caitlin's cruel laugh. Every memory I had of her became poisoned. The bedtime stories, the college graduation, her whisper on her wedding day, "Don't make me cry, Dad." All of it now tainted by the knowledge that behind those moments might have been entitlement, expectation, calculation. And then came the guilt. Was this my fault? Had I spoiled her by giving too much? Had I mistaken dependency for love? Had I built her into someone who believed sacrifice was her right and not my choice? I wanted to call her, to scream, to demand an explanation. But what would she say? That I misheard? That Jeremy twisted her? That she didn't mean it? No. I had heard the truth in her voice. It wasn't hesitation. It was certainty. That certainty shattered something inside me. For the first time, I felt completely alone. Not just without Ellen, but without Caitlin too. The family I had poured everything into was gone, not by death, but by betrayal. And yet, beneath the grief, something else stirred. Rage. It started as a tremor in my hands, then a heat in my chest. Rage at Jeremy for corrupting her, rage at Caitlin for letting herself be corrupted, rage at myself for never seeing it coming. I thought of Ellen again, her words, her letters, the way she always told me, protect our legacy. Don't let it slip away. Was this what she meant? That one day I would have to protect it not from strangers, but from our own blood. The thought made me nauseous, but it also made me sharper. I looked around the house, at the papers in the drawer, the deed in my safe, the photos on the walls. This wasn't just a house, it was my life. My proof that sacrifice meant something, and I wasn't about to hand it over. They thought I was too broken to fight back. But as I stared at Ellen's photo that night, I realized the truth. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about justice, and I would make them pay for underestimating me. I knew I couldn't face this battle alone. For the first few days after the call, I kept to myself. I drifted through the house like a ghost, pulling open drawers, touching old receipts, trying to find something solid to hold on to. But the more I thought about Caitlin and Jeremy's plan, the clearer it became. If I didn't act, I would lose everything. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I asked for help. The first person I called was Thomas Walker, my old friend and neighbor. Tom had been beside me when Ellen and I laid the foundation for this house. He'd lent me tools, shared beers after long days, and was one of the few people I trusted. When I told him what I overheard, his silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Finally, he said, "You mean to tell me Caitlin wants to sell this house out from under you, and Jeremy's behind it?" "Yes," I whispered, the word tasting bitter. "They're planning to put me in a home, Tom, my own daughter." There was a pause, then his voice came back, hard as steel. "Then you're not fighting this alone. You've given too much to roll over now." Hearing that steadied me. For the first time since the call, I felt less like a victim and more like a man with allies. Tom suggested I talk to someone with teeth, a lawyer. He gave me the number of a real estate attorney he knew, a woman named Margaret Chen, who had handled some of his land disputes. I made the appointment the next morning. Walking into her office felt surreal. I had spent decades building homes, but this was the first time I ever had to fight for my right to keep one. Margaret greeted me with a firm handshake, sharp eyes scanning me like she could read the story etched in my face. "What brings you in today, Mr. Harris?" I told her everything, from the overheard call to Jeremy's obsession with my property, to Caitlin's shifting tone in recent months. I half expected her to laugh, to say I was overreacting, just a paranoid old man. But she didn't. She leaned forward, her expression hardening. You did the right thing coming here. If what you say is true, Jeremy's behavior fits the pattern of financial exploitation I've seen in other families. They target elders, convince them to sign over power of attorney, manipulate them into handing over property, sometimes even forge signatures. The words hit me like cold water. This wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was a crime, a pattern. Margaret explained what protections I had. The deed was still in my name, my finances were intact, and unless I signed something willingly, they couldn't touch the property. But she also warned me. Exploitation isn't always about stealing directly. It's about pressure, manipulation, making you doubt yourself until you give them what they want. If you're not prepared, they'll corner you. I clenched my fists, hearing Caitlin's voice again. He trusts me completely. He won't see it coming. Not anymore. Margaret advised me to start documenting everything. Conversations, phone calls, even casual remarks. She told me to keep copies of all my records in a secure place. When I left her office, my chest felt lighter, but my heart was heavier, because now I knew for certain. Jeremy wasn't just greedy, he was a predator. And Caitlin. She was standing right beside him. That night, I sat with Tom on his porch, the summer air heavy with the scent of pine. He passed me a beer and said, "You're not the first man Jeremy's tried to bleed dry. I've heard whispers from the Hendersons 2 streets over. Their aunt lost her condo after her son-in-law helped with the paperwork." I gripped the bottle so tightly my knuckles turned white. So this is what he does. He finds families, gains their trust, then takes everything. Tom nodded grimly. And now he's trying it with you. I stared across the yard at my house, its windows glowing warmly in the dark. My house. Ellen's house. The place where Caitlin had taken her first steps. The rage in me hardened into resolve. They wanted me to be weak, pliable, easy to discard. But I wasn't going anywhere, not without a fight. Because if Jeremy had done this before, I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just about saving my home anymore. It was about stopping a predator, and I was the only one who could. Margaret's words echoed in my mind for days. Document everything. Don't give them an inch. So that's what I did. The next morning, I pulled out the old file cabinet from my study. Dust puffed into the air as I slid open the heavy drawer, releasing decades of memories in manila folders. Ellen had always teased me for keeping every scrap of paper, receipts, tax returns, property deeds. But now, those habits were my armor. I started with the deed. Smooth cream paper, my name etched in bold black ink, signed and notarized 23 years ago. I traced my finger along the edges, my hands trembling. "Still mine," I whispered. "For now." Next came the bank records. I combed through years of statements, marking transactions I didn't recognize. At first, I thought they were just my errors, subscription charges, transfers I'd forgotten. But then I saw Jeremy's name pop up. Twice. Small amounts at first, then larger. Transfers tied to consulting fees that I never authorized. My stomach churned. He was already reaching into my accounts, testing the water. I carried the files to Margaret's office. She adjusted her glasses, scanned the papers, and frowned. "These transfers, did you approve them?" "No," I said firmly. "Then this is evidence. He's dipping in already, seeing how far he can go before you notice." She advised me to contact the bank immediately, which I did. The representative on the line confirmed that the transfers had been initiated using online access credentials I never shared. They froze the account pending investigation. I hung up the phone with my pulse pounding in my ears. My daughter's husband hadn't just plotted against me, he was already stealing. But the worst was yet to come. One evening, a week later, I stepped outside to collect the mail. As I passed the hedge, I heard voices drifting from the street corner. Caitlin's voice, low and urgent. Jeremy's, confident and slick. I froze, hidden in the shadows. "Caitlin, are you sure Dad won't suspect? He's been different lately, quieter." "Jeremy, relax. He still thinks you're on his side. That's his weakness. He wants to believe in you." "Caitlin, but what if he resists? What if he refuses to sign?" Jeremy chuckled, the sound oily. "Then we'll find another way. There are ways to make an old man doubt himself. Gaslight him a little. Make him think he's losing his memory. Once he believes that, he'll sign anything. My heart slammed against my ribs. Gaslight me? Break me down until I question my own mind? I stumbled back inside, my breath ragged, clutching the mailbox like it was the only thing keeping me upright. Later that night, I wrote down every word I remembered, date and time. Margaret told me to keep a running log, and I filled pages with their schemes. The more I dug, the uglier it became. I called Tom again, and he told me he'd heard from another neighbor, the Hendersons, that Jeremy had once helped their elderly aunt sell her condo. Within months, she was penniless, living in assisted housing, while Jeremy flipped the property for a massive profit. It wasn't just me. This was a pattern, a predator feeding on trust. That night, I sat in my study surrounded by stacks of papers, receipts, and notes. The evidence piled higher, but so did my fury. Each document was another nail in the coffin of the man I had once called son-in-law. Each overheard word, another crack in the illusion of the daughter I thought I knew. I looked at Ellen's photograph again. You always said to protect the legacy. I thought that meant strangers. I never thought it would mean our own blood. But as I stared at the growing mountain of evidence, a grim clarity set in. I wasn't just documenting anymore. I was building a case. And when the pile of evidence was finally tall enough, I realized the truth. This wasn't just about saving myself. It was about bringing them down before they did this to anyone else. Until that point, I had told myself Jeremy's betrayal was a personal wound. A man greedy enough to corrupt my daughter, reckless enough to try and steal from me. But what I discovered next made my blood run cold. It wasn't just me. One afternoon, Tom knocked on my door, his face set in a grim line. He carried a folder thick with papers. I thought you should see this, he said. We sat at my kitchen table, the same one where Caitlin once spread her textbooks, begging me for help with math. Tom slid the folder across. Inside were clippings, photocopies, even handwritten notes. Jeremy's got a history, Tom said quietly. I didn't want to believe it at first, but I asked around. Turns out, you're not his first target. I flipped through the pages, my hands trembling. The first file was about the Hendersons' aunt, the one Tom had mentioned before, a sweet woman named Marjorie who had trusted Jeremy with her finances after her health began to decline. Within 6 months, her condo was sold, her accounts drained, and she was moved into a low-grade nursing facility 2 counties over. She died there, alone. The next case was even worse. A retired couple, the Myers, who thought Jeremy was helping them consolidate their investments. In reality, he siphoned money into shell companies and left them bankrupt. They had to sell their family home, the same house their grandchildren grew up visiting, just to cover debts Jeremy created. And then there was a third, a widower named Samuel Price. The pattern was identical. Jeremy swooped in with charm and promises, manipulated documents, convinced family members he was protecting their loved one. Within a year, Samuel lost both his home and his dignity. I sat back in my chair, the papers blurring in front of me. My heart thundered in my chest. This wasn't just a greedy man. This was a predator, a serial exploiter who thrived on trust and family ties. I clenched my fists. And now he's doing it again, with Caitlin's help. Tom nodded grimly. That's why you need to be careful. He's not some fool. He knows exactly how to play people, and your daughter, well, she's standing right beside him. The weight of it crushed me. I wanted to scream, to tear the papers apart, to march straight to Caitlin's house and throw them in her face. But the lawyer's voice echoed in my mind. Don't give them an inch. Build your case. So I forced myself to breathe, forced myself to see the bigger picture. If Jeremy had done this 3 times, he'd do it again. He would find more families, more vulnerable elders, more trusting daughters and sons. And each time, he would strip them bare. No, not anymore. That night, I sat at my desk with the lamp casting a pale glow over the evidence. I pulled out Ellen's letters again, the ones she'd written before she passed, her handwriting curled across the page. Protect our legacy. Protect what matters. For the first time, I realized Ellen hadn't just been talking about the house. She'd been talking about values, about dignity, about standing up for what was right, no matter the cost. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Marjorie, about the Myers, about Samuel Price, about every family Jeremy had destroyed. and I swore, right then, that I would be the last victim he ever tried to claim. Because if Jeremy had left a trail of broken families behind him, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would be the man who finally stopped him. That night, the house felt like a tomb. I sat at my desk, surrounded by piles of evidence, bank records, deeds, Tom's folder of past victims. The silence pressed in, broken only by the ticking clock on the wall. I should have felt crushed under the weight of it all. Instead, I felt empty. Empty until I opened the top drawer and found Ellen's letters. She had written them during her illness, tucking them into envelopes labeled for different moments of my life. For when you feel lost. For when you miss me most. For when you don't know what to do. My hands trembled as I opened the last one. The paper was soft from age, her handwriting graceful as ever. My love, I know you. You will give everything for those you care about, even when they don't deserve it. That is your greatest strength and your greatest weakness. Promise me this. Protect our legacy. Protect what we built, even if one day you must protect it from the very people we gave it to. And don't forget, you are stronger than you believe. I pressed the letter to my chest, tears burning my eyes. It felt like Ellen was right there in the room with me, her voice whispering in the air. For months I had been drifting, clinging to memories, waiting for Caitlin to be the daughter I once knew. But now I saw the truth. That girl was gone, or at least buried under Jeremy's poison. And maybe Ellen had known, even then. Maybe that's why she wrote those words, as if she could see the storm coming before I did. I wiped my eyes and looked around the study. The lamplight glowed against the wooden shelves we had stained together. The coffee table in the living room, the curtains Ellen had sewn, the very walls Caitlin once colored on as a child. All of it was built with sacrifice, with love, and they thought they could take it from me with a signature, with lies, with laughter on a phone call? No. Something inside me shifted, like a blade finally pulled free from its sheath. I wasn't just a grieving widower anymore. I wasn't just a father betrayed. I was a man with nothing left to lose, and that made me dangerous. I read Ellen's letter again, her words like fire in my veins. Protect our legacy. Protect what we built. Fine, I would. Not just for me, not even just for her. But for every nail I hammered into these walls, every hour I worked double shifts, every night I came home bone-tired, but determined to give Caitlin more than I ever had. They wanted to erase me. They wanted to discard me. Instead, I would erase their illusion of control. I stood, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor, and walked to the mantel. Ellen's photo looked back at me, her smile soft and knowing. I won't let them win, I whispered. Not him, not even her. I promise you, Ellen, our legacy won't die in their hands. The grief was still there, but it had transformed, hardened, sharpened. And as I stood there in the dim glow of the lamp, I realized this was no longer a story of survival. It was a story of justice. They thought they could bury me in a nursing home and walk away with my life's work. But they were about to learn. I bury my enemies, not the other way around. The knock on my door came early on a Saturday morning, too early for a casual visit. When I opened it, Caitlin stood there, dressed in her business casual armor, pressed blouse, polished shoes, hair pulled into a neat bun. She was smiling, but it wasn't the warm, easy smile of my little girl. No, this was practiced, professional. "Hi, Dad," she said, stepping inside before I could even invite her. "I brought you some muffins." The basket she set on the counter smelled like blueberries, but the sweetness of it didn't touch her eyes. Something in my stomach twisted. This wasn't a daughter visiting her father. This was a salesperson walking into a negotiation. We made small talk, work, weather, a few empty questions about whether I'd been eating enough. I answered politely, but my mind was racing. I knew what this was. Margaret had warned me. They'll try to soften you first, guilt you, wear you down. Sure enough, a few minutes later, Caitlin slid into the chair across from me at the kitchen table. She folded her hands, lowered her voice, and said, "Dad, there's something we need to talk about." I braced myself. "You've been forgetful lately. Jeremy and I are worried. What if you leave the stove on again? What if you fall and no one's there?" I kept my face calm, though every word scraped against my nerves. "I'm fine, Caitlin," I said quietly. Her eyes flicked up to mine, then back to her folded hands. "I know you think that, But Dad, it's getting harder for you to manage things on your own. Bills, property taxes, insurance. It's a lot. She paused, then slid a crisp envelope across the table. That's why Jeremy and I had these papers drawn up. Power of attorney. It just means we can help take care of things for you, protect you. I stared at the envelope without touching it. She leaned closer, her voice soft, almost pleading. Don't you trust me? I'm your daughter. There it was, the dagger cloaked in silk. I swallowed hard, forcing myself not to explode. Instead, I let my hands tremble slightly like the frail old man she thought I was. Power of attorney, huh? That sounds serious. It's not, really, she rushed to reassure me. Just a precaution. Everyone does it at your age. This way you don't have to worry. We'll handle everything. You can relax. Her tone was gentle, but underneath it I could hear Jeremy's voice. Smooth, persuasive, rehearsed. I picked up the envelope, weighing it in my hands. My pulse hammered in my ears. If I sign this, everything Ellen and I built, this house, our savings, our legacy, would be theirs within weeks. But instead of tearing it up, I slipped the envelope back onto the table. I forced a weary smile. Thank you, sweetheart, I said, letting my voice shake just enough. I'll look it over. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is time for me to stop worrying so much. Her eyes lit up with relief. She actually believed she had me. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I just want what's best for you, Dad. Trust me. I nodded, though inside, fire roared through my veins. When she finally left, the muffins still sitting untouched on the counter, I sat back in the silence of the kitchen. My hands clenched into fists. That envelope wasn't a gift. It was a weapon, and my daughter had just tried to use it against me. But she had no idea I was already armed. She thought I was wavering, but she didn't see the truth. By handing me those papers, Caitlin had just given me proof, and I was going to use it to destroy them both. The envelope Caitlin left on my kitchen table sat there for 3 days. I never opened it. I didn't need to. I already knew what was inside. Betrayal dressed up as protection. But her little stunt did something she hadn't expected. It made my decision clear. If Caitlin and Jeremy wanted this house so badly, I'd make sure it slipped right through their greedy fingers. I spent the next week moving like a shadow, careful not to raise suspicion. When Caitlin called, I let my voice sound tired, hesitant. I even told her I was thinking about the papers, just to keep her comfortable in her delusion. Meanwhile, I was planning my countermove. The first step was calling Margaret. I want to sell the house, I told her. There was a pause on the line. You're serious? Serious as I've ever been. Margaret didn't argue. She simply said, then we'll do it discreetly. No listing on public sites, no open houses. We'll find a private buyer, fast, cash, if possible. Within 2 days, she connected me with a realtor she trusted, a quiet professional who specialized in off-market deals. I met him in the back booth of a small diner, papers spread between us like blueprints for war. This property, he said, tapping the deed, is worth close to $900,000, maybe more. If you want speed, you might not hit the top of the market, but I can guarantee a clean cash offer. I leaned back, folding my arms. Speed is more important than money. Because this wasn't about profit, it was about cutting Caitlin and Jeremy off before they could strike. Over the next week, the realtor brought in 2 potential buyers. Both were investors, men with sharp suits and sharper eyes. They walked through my house, tapping walls, testing windows, nodding with approval. I stood silently in the background, Ellen's photo watching from the mantel like a guardian. When one of them finally said, I'll pay $880, cash, close in 10 days. I shook his hand before he could change his mind. The trap was set. But even as the deal moved forward, I played my role. I let Caitlin think I was wavering, confused. She stopped by one evening with Jeremy, both of them grinning like wolves. Dad, have you had a chance to review the papers? Caitlin asked, her voice sugar sweet. I shuffled my hands, let them tremble just enough. I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's time. Jeremy clapped me on the shoulder, his grip firm, his smile thin. Don't worry, sir. We'll take good care of everything. I nodded, hiding the smirk that threatened to break across my face. Take good care of it, will you? In less than 2 weeks, you'll be standing at a locked door with nothing inside. When they left that night, laughing softly together, I stood at the window watching them cross the driveway. For the first time since Ellen's death, I felt something like power coursing through me again. They thought they were playing me. They thought I was blind, weak, easy prey. But the board had shifted, and they didn't even realize I was the one moving the pieces. The papers were signed, the deal was in motion, and soon the house they planned to steal would vanish before their very eyes. Closing day. I woke before dawn, the house quiet except for the old pipes groaning with morning water. For years I had started each day in this place the same way, coffee brewing in the kitchen, Ellen's photograph catching the first light. But this morning felt different. Lighter. Like the house itself knew it was about to slip out of Caitlin and Jeremy's reach. I dressed carefully, combed my thinning hair, and slid the folder of documents Margaret had prepared into my worn leather briefcase. My hands didn't tremble. For the first time in months, they were steady. At the law office, the smell of polished wood and fresh paper filled the air. Margaret met me in the lobby, her expression composed, but her eyes glinting with something fierce. "Ready?" she asked. "More than ready," I said. We walked into the conference room, where the buyer already waited, Mr. Collins, a sharp-eyed man in a tailored suit. His handshake was firm, confident. He wanted the property, and I was more than willing to hand it to him, for the right price and at the right moment. Stacks of papers lay on the table, contracts, deeds, transfer agreements. The realtor slid them across to me, one after another. I picked up the pen, the weight of it heavy in my hand, and began to sign. Each signature felt like a nail in the coffin of Caitlin and Jeremy's plans. When the final page slid across, Margaret leaned in and whispered, "With this one, it's done." I signed. Just like that, the house was no longer mine, but it wasn't theirs either. The buyer shook my hand, a satisfied smile tugging at his lips. "We'll transfer the funds this afternoon. $880,000 wired directly to your account." I nodded, slipping the pen back into my pocket. "Pleasure doing business." Walking out of that office, I felt taller somehow. For months, Caitlin and Jeremy had been circling like vultures, waiting for me to collapse. Instead, I had beaten them to the punch. The house they thought they could inherit, manipulate, or steal was gone, sold cleanly, legally, permanently. That afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table as the email from the bank came through. The balance stared back at me. $880,000 deposited. I leaned back in the chair, letting out a long breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The weight of betrayal, the months of grief and doubt, it all shifted, replaced by something stronger. Control. Later that evening, Caitlin called. "Hi, Dad," she said, her voice sweet, practiced. "Jeremy and I were thinking of stopping by this weekend. Maybe we can go over those papers again?" I smiled into the phone, keeping my tone soft, almost weary. "Of course, sweetheart. We'll talk soon." She had no idea. None. While she dreamed of power of attorney, while Jeremy imagined flipping my house for profit, the deed was already signed, the money already in my account. The stage was set. They thought they had me cornered, but soon, when they came home expecting control, they would find nothing but locked doors and the sound of their own greed echoing back at them. For weeks I had carried the weight of Caitlin's words in silence, letting them churn in my chest like poison. But what they didn't know, what neither of them could have imagined, was that the very call they thought was private had given me a weapon. Because when Caitlin forgot to hang up that night, when her purse muffled the phone, but her voice spilled out like venom, I didn't just sit frozen in shock. My old instincts had kicked in. I pressed the record button, every word, every laugh, every detail of their plan to sell my house and shove me into a home. It was all captured. I had listened to it dozens of times since then. Each time, it felt like a knife reopening the wound, but each time also hardened my resolve. Because I knew when the moment came, I would use their own voices to destroy them. The day after the sale closed, I sat at my desk in the study. Ellen's photo smiled at me from the mantel. The recorder sat in my hand, its little red light blinking as if it, too, anticipated what was coming. I pressed play. Caitlin's voice filled the room, soft but unmistakably cold. "It's time for him to go to a nursing home. He's a burden." Jeremy's laugh followed, slick and confident. "The house is worth almost $1 million now. If we sell it, we can buy that Boulder place with the mountain view." Then Caitlin again, sharper this time. "He trusts me completely. He won't see it coming." The words hung in the air, poisonous and undeniable. I closed my eyes, gripping the recorder until my knuckles whitened. Soon, I told myself. Soon, they'll hear it too. And when they do, there will be no excuses. No tears, no pleading that can erase what they said. Because it won't be me accusing them. It will be their own voices condemning them. That weekend, Caitlin texted again. Can we stop by tomorrow? Jeremy wants to go over things. I typed back. Of course, I'll be here. When I put the phone down, I allowed myself a rare smile. The stage was set. The house was sold. The money was secured. And the recording was waiting. All that remained was the performance. The confrontation that would strip away their masks once and for all. I rehearsed it in my head, pacing the living room. I imagined Caitlin sitting where she once curled up as a child. Jeremy standing smugly with his hands in his pockets. I imagined the exact moment when I would press play, when their laughter would echo back at them, when their faces would fall as they realized the trap they had walked into. For months, I had been the one in shock, the one reeling from betrayal. But soon the roles would reverse, and they would never see it coming. Tomorrow, when they sat across from me, I would press play, and for the first time, they would hear the sound of their own betrayal tearing their empire apart. The next afternoon, I set the stage. The recorder sat on the coffee table, hidden under a stack of old magazines. Ellen's photograph watched from the mantel, her smile steady, as if she knew this was the moment I'd been waiting for. When the knock came, my pulse quickened, but not from fear, from anticipation. I opened the door to find Caitlin and Jeremy standing there, all polished smiles and false concern. Caitlin carried another basket of muffins, Jeremy a leather folder under his arm. Dad, Caitlin said brightly, kissing my cheek. We thought we'd go over the papers together today. Jeremy followed, his grin smug. It's the smart thing to do, sir. No reason to burden yourself with all that paperwork. I said nothing, just gestured to the living room. They settled in, Caitlin on the sofa, Jeremy in the armchair. I lowered myself slowly into Ellen's recliner. The three of us sat like actors waiting for the curtain to rise. Jeremy wasted no time. He pulled out the folder and slid it toward me. Power of attorney. Just sign here, here, and here. Caitlin and I will take care of the rest. I didn't touch the papers. Instead, I leaned back, folded my hands, and studied them. Funny, I said quietly. You two always seem so prepared, almost like you've rehearsed this. Caitlin blinked. Dad, what do you mean? I didn't answer. I reached for the recorder hidden beneath the magazines, clicked the button, and set it on the table. Jeremy frowned. What's that? The room filled with Caitlin's voice, cold, sharp, undeniable. It's time for him to go to a nursing home. He's a burden. Caitlin's face drained of color. Jeremy started to speak, but the recording cut him off. His own voice spilled into the room, smug and oily. The house is worth almost $1 million now. If we sell it, we can buy that Boulder place with the mountain view. Then Caitlin again. He trusts me completely. He won't see it coming. The room went silent except for the faint whir of the recorder. Caitlin's lips parted, her eyes wide with horror. Dad, that's not what it sounds like. Jeremy leaned forward, his face flushed. Where the hell did you get that? I looked from one to the other, my voice calm, steady. I didn't get it. You gave it to me. You forgot to hang up that night. Caitlin's eyes filled with tears. Dad, please, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, I cut in, my tone sharp enough to slice the air. I understand that my own daughter laughed while planning to throw me into a nursing home. I understand that you, Jeremy, saw me as nothing more than a pile of bricks and dollar signs. And I understand that you both thought I was too weak to fight back. Jeremy stood, his hands balling into fists. You can't prove anything with this. No one will believe you. I smiled, a bitter edge to it. Maybe I'll let the rest of the family hear it. Maybe the neighbors too. Or maybe I'll take it straight to a lawyer. Caitlin sobbed, reaching for me. Dad, please, we didn't mean it. We were just talking. We'd never really do it. I pulled my hand away. You already tried. I pointed to the folder on the table. You wanted me to sign away my life, and you thought I'd do it with a smile. For the first time, Jeremy's mask cracked. The smug confidence drained from his face, replaced by a flicker of fear. He realized the game was no longer his to control. I leaned forward, my voice low but firm. Here's the truth. The house, it's gone. Sold. The money is mine. Secured. You'll never touch it. And now the world will know exactly who you are. The recording clicked off, the silence deafening. Across from me, Caitlin wept, and Jeremy paled, and for the first time, they knew. The power had shifted. Completely. The silence after the recording clicked off was thicker than any I'd ever known. Caitlin's sobs filled it first, small, broken sounds that might have once pierced my heart, but not anymore. Jeremy broke next, his face twisted with fury. You think you've outsmarted us? You think this little game changes anything? He jabbed a finger toward the recorder. That won't hold up in court. You're senile. No one will believe you. I leaned back in Ellen's recliner, calm as stone. Funny, I said softly. You sound nervous. His jaw clenched. He stood, pacing like a caged animal, hands raking through his hair. Caitlin reached for me, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Dad, please. I made a mistake. We were just talking. You know me? I'd never really do that to you. I met her eyes, and for a flicker, I saw the little girl who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms. But then I remembered her laugh on that call, the cold calculation in her tone. You already tried, I said firmly. You pushed me to sign. You thought I'd hand everything over. That wasn't talk. That was action. Her lip trembled. She turned to Jeremy as if searching for rescue. But Jeremy was unraveling. Listen here, old man, he snapped, leaning over me. You think you're clever, selling the house out from under us? You've got nothing now. You'll rot alone while we build a life without you. I didn't flinch. The only thing rotting here, Jeremy, is your conscience, if you ever had one. Caitlin broke into full-blown begging then, her voice shrill and desperate. Dad, don't do this. Please don't tell anyone. If the family finds out, if the neighbors hear, we'll lose everything. I'll lose everything. You already did, I whispered. Her body shook, shoulders curling inward, but Jeremy wasn't done. He'd lunged forward, grabbing the edge of the coffee table, his knuckles white. You release that recording, and I'll bury you. I've got contacts, lawyers. You think anyone will believe a bitter old man over me? I leaned forward, my voice dropping into the kind of tone Ellen used to call the hammer. They don't have to believe me. They only need to believe you. And lucky for me, your own voice did the work. Jeremy froze. His face shifted. Anger, then fear, then something else. Realization. He knew I was right. He sank back into the armchair, silent. Caitlin's sobs quieted into hiccups. She wiped her cheeks with shaking hands. Dad, please. I don't want to lose you. I wanted to laugh at the hypocrisy. You lost me the moment you called me a burden. The weight of those words hung heavy between us. For the first time since Ellen's death, I felt strong again. Not because I had humiliated them, but because I had taken back control. They thought I would crumble under guilt and pressure. Instead, they were the ones collapsing. Caitlin weeping, Jeremy deflated. I stood, towering over them, though my body ached. Get out of my house. Jeremy's head snapped up. What? You heard me. Out. Now. Caitlin reached for me one last time, her voice breaking. Dad, please. Out. The word cracked through the room like a thunderclap. They stumbled toward the door, Caitlin sobbing, Jeremy muttering curses under his breath. As the door slammed shut behind them, silence returned. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was liberating. They thought they could manipulate me into silence, but now it was their turn to fear the silence, because in that silence lived the truth, and the truth was about to ruin them. When the front door slammed behind Caitlin and Jeremy, I thought that might be the end of it. But no, betrayal that deep doesn't heal in silence. It festers until the light burns it out. The next day I called Margaret. It's time, I told her. She didn't ask what I meant. She knew. By the weekend, word was already spreading. I hadn't released the recording outright. Not yet. But I had played it for a few key people. Tom, my neighbor who had stood by me through everything. My sister Elaine, who lived 2 towns over and still believed Caitlin was the perfect daughter. And Margaret, who kept shaking her head as Jeremy's smug voice played back through the speakers. Elaine gasped when she heard it. My God, David, that's her. That's really her. I nodded, though my chest ached. That's your niece. That's my daughter. Within days, the whispers turned into open talk. At church, people avoided Caitlin's gaze. At the grocery store, Jeremy's charm no longer drew polite smiles. Even the Hendersons, whose aunt had been one of Jeremy's victims, stepped forward with their own story once they realized they weren't alone. I didn't need to blast the recording on the evening news. I just let the truth travel through the same community they had scorned. And in small towns like ours, reputations don't break quietly. They shatter. One evening, I sat on the porch as the sun dipped behind the trees. Tom joined me, sipping his beer. Across the street, I watched Caitlin pull into her driveway. Her shoulders slumped as she stepped out of the car. No polished bun this time, no confident stride. Just a woman weighed down by her own choices. Neighbors walking their dogs crossed to the other side of the street rather than greet her, she noticed. I could see it in the way her chin trembled, the way she hurried inside. Jeremy didn't fare better. I heard he'd been laughed out of a local Rotary meeting when he tried to pitch his latest investment opportunity. Someone stood up and asked loudly, "How many elders do you have to bleed dry before you're satisfied?" He stormed out red-faced, and I imagined it was the first of many doors closing on him. But the real blow came at a family gathering. Elaine hosted a Sunday dinner, inviting cousins, aunts, uncles, a table that used to be Caitlin's stage to show off her perfect life. This time, when she tried to speak, the room fell silent. Elaine looked her straight in the eye. "Caitlin, how could you call your father a burden? How could you plot to throw him away like trash?" Caitlin broke into tears, but no one rushed to comfort her. Not this time. Jeremy tried to step in, his voice sharp. "You don't know the whole story." Elaine cut him off. "We've heard enough of your stories. We heard your own voice." The room turned on them, a wall of shame pressing them back. Caitlin sobbed into her napkin. Jeremy clenched his fists, but there was nothing left for them to argue. I didn't gloat. I just sat there quietly, my hands folded, Ellen's ring still on my finger. For years, I had been the man who gave everything, and for a moment, they had made me feel like nothing. But now the truth stood tall, and their empire of lies collapsed in front of the very people whose approval they crave most. They left that dinner early, faces pale, eyes hollow. They hadn't just lost me. They had lost their place in the family, in the community, in the world they thought they controlled. And all I had done was press play. The whispers followed them everywhere now, their laughter replaced by silence, their names spoken with pity and disgust. And yet, my revenge was not finished. It was only sharpening. After the dinner, after the whispers spread and Caitlin and Jeremy's smiles turned into grimaces, I could have stopped. Many men might have. Their reputation was in tatters, their social circle crumbling. For some, that would have been enough. But not for me. Not after everything they had tried to take. Ellen's words echoed in my mind. Protect our legacy. Protect what we built. So I did what I should have done long ago. I opened a new account and sat down with Margaret to create a trust fund. Not for Caitlin, not for Jeremy, but for my grandchildren. Whatever mistakes their parents had made, the children were innocent. They deserved to know that sacrifice could still mean something good. We drafted the documents carefully. The trust would be untouchable, airtight. No power of attorney, no manipulative schemes could reach it. One day, when the kids turned 18, they'd have college tuition, a down payment for a home, or a cushion to build a real future. I signed the papers with a steady hand, imagining Ellen smiling down, proud. But even as that chapter closed, another began. Because I hadn't forgotten the evidence, Jeremy's fingerprints in my accounts, his consulting fees, the trail of families he'd scammed, and I hadn't forgotten the rumors about his finances, whispers that he moved money like a magician hides cards. So I made one last move. Late one night, I sat at my desk with the lamp glowing softly. I opened my laptop, navigated to the IRS tip submission site, and uploaded every scrap of evidence I had. Bank statements, suspicious transfers, and of course, the recording. I didn't sign my name. I didn't need to. Truth has a way of speaking for itself. When I hit submit, a weight lifted off my shoulders. It wasn't vengeance for vengeance's sake. It was justice. If Jeremy had stolen from me, from the Hendersons, from Marjorie, from Samuel Price, then he'd answer not just to me, but to the law. And Caitlin? She would stand beside him, the partner she chose, and bear the fallout of her choices. Weeks later, I heard the first rumblings. Jeremy's firm under audit. Accounts frozen, meetings canceled. People who once shook his hand now avoided him like the plague. Soon, the knock would come at his door, and for once, he'd know what it felt like to be cornered. As for me, I moved into a modest home by the lake, smaller, quieter, but mine. On the mantel sat Ellen's picture, and beside it, a framed copy of the trust documents, proof that the legacy we built hadn't been destroyed. It had been redirected, preserved. Some nights I sat on the porch listening to the water lap against the shore. I thought about Caitlin, about the girl she once was. My heart still ached. A father's love doesn't vanish, even when betrayed. But I also thought about the woman she became, the one who laughed while planning my downfall. That woman was gone from my life, by my choice. And in her place was something stronger. Peace. I hadn't just survived their scheme. I had turned it into their undoing. They wanted to erase me, but instead, I erased their empire. My legacy lives on in the hands of the innocent, while their future crumbles under the weight of their own greed. And that, I realized, was the truest revenge of all.